Marvin Winans was born in Detroit, Michigan in 1958. He grew up in a very special family. His parents, David and Dolores Winans, were called Mom and Pop Winans because music and church were a part of their daily life. Marvin was the fourth of 10 children, and every one of them was gifted in music. You won't believe it, but their house was like a church in itself. Every night felt like a concert, every morning felt like a prayer. Let me tell you, this was how Marvin learned to love singing and preaching long before he was a teenager. He gave his life to God when he was only 12 years old and spoke his first sermon when he was 18. Even at that young age, people said he spoke with a voice that felt like it came from deep inside the heart. What makes this story different? The Winans weren't just any family. They were called the first family of gospel because every member sang, played an instrument, or worked in church. The craziest part? Marvin started singing at just 4 years old, traveling with his brothers to perform at church events. In the 1970s, Marvin, along with his brothers, came together to form a group called the Winans. They were discovered by gospel legend Andre Crouch, and this was where it got interesting. The group rose quickly to become one of the biggest names in gospel music. They started releasing albums, and soon the whole world knew the sound of the Winans. The songs were hopeful, soulful, and spoke to people's hearts. Destiny took an unexpected turn when Marvin went from being just one voice in a family to a gospel star in his own right. Through the 1980s and 1990s, the Winans created hit after hit. They won Grammy Awards, earned respect from music lovers of all kinds, and became a symbol of strength and unity. But here is the shocking part. Despite all the success, life had a way of reminding Marvin that he was still just a man. In 2024, when he was 66 years old and still preaching every Sunday, Marvin announced in a sermon that he had been diagnosed with bladder cancer. You won't believe how quietly this news came. A man who had inspired millions for decades was now standing before his church, telling them about the biggest tests of his life. What made this moment different was how Marvin chose to handle it. Let me tell you, he refused to hide. He spoke openly about his illness, asking for prayers, and leaning on the strength that came from deep within him. The craziest part? Just a short while later, after treatments and countless prayers from people across the world, Marvin announced that the cancer was gone. The doctors could not find any sign of it. The church erupted in joy, and Marvin called it a miracle. But here is the shocking part. This was not the end of his struggles. It was only the beginning. Just when everyone thought Marvin had conquered this disease for good, life came crashing down in a way no one expected. During a service at Perfecting Church in Toledo, he suddenly collapsed. The man who had inspired generations with his music and preaching was now being carried out of his own church. You won't believe it, but this moment shook everyone who witnessed it. Let me tell you, this was how one chapter ended and another darker chapter began. After that collapse, a wave of fear swept through Marvin Winans' church. People wondered if this was a sign that the cancer had returned or if something new was wrong. Let me tell you, this was how a strong man suddenly appeared fragile before the very people he had inspired for so long. The craziest part? Marvin refused to let this moment break him. He reassured everyone that he was okay and spoke openly about how important rest and recovery were. What makes this story different was how he used this scary moment to teach a lesson about trust and faith. But here is the shocking part. This was not the first time Marvin Winans had felt pain and fear in the city he called home. In 2012, in broad daylight, he was carjacked at a gas station in Detroit. You won't believe it, but 3 young men came out of nowhere and attacked him. They beat him badly, stole his SUV, and even took his watch and wallet. Let me tell you, this shook the city and made national news. A man who had dedicated his whole life to spreading love and hope was suddenly a target of brutal violence. The craziest part? Marvin refused to hate those young men. Instead, He spoke openly about how this attack showed the deep struggles that many in Detroit faced every day. He used the moment to call for compassion and understanding, reminding everyone that pain and anger only breed more pain and anger. But here's the shocking part. The attack brought to light another story. When the police arrived and began looking into the case, it was revealed that Marvin had been driving with a suspended license because of old, unpaid traffic tickets. Let me tell you, this news became a scandal. Suddenly, the story shifted from the attack itself to questions about how a man of God, a pastor, and a Grammy-winning singer could have overlooked such a thing. What makes this story different? It was a reminder that even the strongest leaders have moments of weakness, moments when life catches up with them. Marvin responded openly and honestly. He paid the tickets, cleared his license, and spoke to his church about the mistake. The craziest part, instead of seeing this as a scandal, Marvin used it to teach lessons about accountability and grace. He spoke about how every person, no matter how holy, can stumble. Let me tell you, this was how he kept the trust of the people who looked up to him. This is where it got interesting. He refused to hide behind excuses and chose to live in the light, reminding everyone that no one is perfect and that it is okay to fall down as long as you have the strength and faith to get back up. This chapter of Marvin's life became one of the biggest moments in his ministry. It shaped the way he spoke to people about pain and struggle, making him more relatable than ever. Destiny took an unexpected turn for Marvin Winans when he came out of this experience stronger, wiser, and more determined to walk with his church and community, no matter how dark the path became. After surviving the carjacking and openly accepting his own mistake about the suspended license, Marvin Winans felt like he had learned a lot about life, forgiveness, and grace. But the biggest test of his strength came from an unexpected place, from inside his own home. Let me tell you, this was how one chapter of Marvin's life came to a painful end. In 1995, after 16 years of marriage, Marvin and Vicki Winans announced their divorce. You won't believe it, but this was a moment that shook the gospel music world. Marvin and Vicki weren't just any couple. They were a symbol of faith, music, and strength for so many people. Together, they had built a beautiful family, raised 3 children, and inspired countless listeners with their music. What makes this story different? The fact that no one expected it. They were seen as the ideal gospel couple, a match made in heaven. The craziest part? The divorce came quietly. There was no scandal, no betrayal. Let me tell you, this was how the pressure of long tours, public life, and constant scrutiny slowly pulled them apart. Here is the shocking part. Both Marvin and Vicki spoke openly about it later, saying that it was not about anger or betrayal, but about growing apart. They were both chasing careers, touring across the country, preaching, singing, and serving others. Destiny took an unexpected turn when their very callings pulled them in different directions. Let me tell you, it was a heartbreak felt by both their families and their followers, and it sparked conversations about how even the strongest couples can struggle when life demands too much. Through this pain, Marvin refused to break down. He spoke openly from the pulpit about heartbreak, about how God can heal even when things seem broken beyond repair. This was where it got interesting. Marvin used his own story of loss to teach others about resilience, about finding strength in moments when life felt too hard. What made this chapter different was how Marvin refused to run from it. Instead, he faced it openly, reminding everyone that trials and heartbreak were a part of life, even for a man of God. The craziest part? Marvin didn't stay down for long. He later found love and stability when he married Dr. Deneen Carter in 2022, starting a new chapter in his life. Let me tell you, this was how Marvin Winans kept turning moments of heartbreak into moments of hope. But here is the shocking part. this was still not the end of his struggles. In fact, one of the biggest trials he would ever face was still yet to come. And it was a moment that tested every ounce of faith he had built over a lifetime. Marvin Winans had faced many trials in life, but the biggest test came when he felt like the very ground beneath him was shaking. Let me tell you, this was where it got interesting. This was the chapter that truly defined him as a man of God and a man of strength. Even after beating cancer, surviving a brutal carjacking, and finding peace after a painful divorce, life still had one more test for him. The craziest part, it came when he least expected it. In late 2024, Marvin was preaching to his congregation when he suddenly collapsed. You won't believe it, but for a moment, the church felt like it was holding its breath. The man who had inspired generations with songs and sermons was now being carried out by his team, looking tired and fragile. Let me tell you, this was how many wondered if the end had come for a man who had always been a symbol of strength and grace. But here is the shocking part. Marvin refused to let this moment define him. After resting and recovering, he returned to the pulpit with a message more powerful than ever. What makes this story different? It is that every time life tried to bury him, Marvin came back with more faith, more resilience, and more love to give. Destiny took an unexpected turn for him when he announced that despite every setback, every heartbreak, and every test, he still stood strong because of one thing: his unshakable belief in God. Through it all, Marvin Winans built more than a legacy. He built a lesson for every person who felt broken, every person who felt lost. The craziest part, he proved that it doesn't matter how hard life hits you. It only matters how strong your heart is when you rise again. Let me tell you, this was how Marvin Winans became more than a pastor, more than a singer, and more than a man. He became a living witness that no matter how dark the night, morning will always come. Today, Marvin Winans still preaches, still inspires, still reminds the world that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. You won't believe it, but every chapter of his life, every heartbreak, every victory, every scar, shaped him into the man he is. This was where it got interesting, and this is why his story will always matter.